This is the largest public sector union strike in 40 years. Revenue Canada workers are off the job and vital services have been halted. The tax filing deadline is this week and Canadians can't even get their phone calls answered. When will what is the government going to do to ensure continuity of service so Canadians can get their most basic questions answered?
Great question.
I thank the honourable member for his question, and my honourable colleague stated this very clearly in this House, that if Canadians file their taxes before the deadline online, there will be no impact to the PSAC strike that's going on right now. Mr. Speaker, let's be really clear. We believe in a negotiated settlement. We believe in working at the table. Mr. Speaker, let's look at the contrast between 9 years of economic stagnation on the other side, when the only playbook from the Conservative Austerity Caucus was chop, chop, chop. Whether it was status of women's offices, veterans' offices, rating EI, Mr. Speaker, Canadians know a government that has their backs, and that is our government.
Member for Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, how can the government expect Canadians to file their taxes by the deadline if they can't even get their questions answered? The government knew when the contract was up. They know when tax filing deadline is. So I will ask, how much money will it cost the taxpayers for this government to end the strike?
I understand that the Conservatives have an issue with the truth, but I'm just going to tell the truth. And the truth of the matter is that while there is a strike going on, I do recommend to Canadians not to submit an application for a passport unless it is urgent, because under the strike conditions, which are in law, they are unable to process those passports. And so, Mr. Speaker, unlike the Conservatives, I actually believe in telling the truth to Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The truth is, the Liberals had 2 years to fix this before it happened. That chaos out on the streets, this missed service, the lack of customer service is on their backs. 50% more in bureaucracy and the worst customer service this country has ever experienced. So one more time for the people across the aisle, when will they fix what they broke, and how much is it going to cost Canadian taxpayers?
I know the Conservatives have short memories, but when we increased the public service by 50%, it's because we were delivering the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit to 8.5 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker. It's the fact that at the greatest health and economic challenge of our time, this government was there for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, my big concern is the fact that the Conservatives have not only forgotten that, but that they wouldn't do the same thing to help Canadians in their time of need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
During the pandemic, Canadians had to wait hours in line to get a passport. Delays took 4 or 5 months for Canadians to obtain those passports, and the backlog by last August reached 340,000 Canadians. Wow. The pandemic ended, though, and Canadians thought, finally, things will get back to normal. But they failed to take into account the competence of this government's ministers. Despite the largest expansion of the public service in recent decades and tens of billions of dollars spent on consultants, the government has managed to oversee the largest strike in decades in the public service. The minister's response? Don't apply for a passport. What travel document are Canadians supposed to travel on?
Mr. Speaker, during a general strike, by law, passport services are not considered to be essential. If there are urgent or humanitarian cases, they will be processed. That information is available on the website. But, Mr. Speaker, I have grave concerns with the short-term memory losses of the Conservatives, who have forgotten that those investments that were made were there to help 8.5 million Canadians get through the biggest health and economic challenge of our time. Mr. Speaker, Canadians understand